We were in some like article about how people use AI in the modern world, but they actually took a screenshot of the app and she's in it.
This is Artemis. Here she is in the Wall Street Journal, and this is Priya Rose, her mom and one of the founders of Fractal, a neighborhood, campus-style community in New York City that has amassed over 1,000 engaged members, 70 residents, its own mini university, tech hub, and Bootcamp. And the crazy part? It's all decentralized. Everyone pitches in their own way to make the magic happen, which is why Fractal is now popping up globally, from Geneva to Boston and even my hometown Toronto. But rewind 8 years, and you wouldn't imagine Priya's rock bottom. She was in a phase of isolation, without a clue of what she'd be on the verge of starting only a few years later by hosting very casual dinner parties. In this episode, we're going to explore how Priya pivoted within her rock bottom, how you can easily start a tight-knit community, and then turn that community into a launchpad through this concept called Senius, a powerful way that like minds can create a scene and boost each other up to change the world. So let's get started. Priya, how do you describe Fractal and all this to your mom?
I built a big community of people who live near each other and teach each other classes and hang out a lot. And it's just like really different than I think the default life where you're a lot more isolated. It feels a lot like living on a college campus. You see your friends a lot, and there's so much going on. Most of my friends don't own a TV. That's like a big default activity for people, but that's partly because they live far away from other things that would be fun for them.
Most of my 20s, I felt like success was living alone, having your own pad.
Yeah.
But seeing just how like you have all these wonderful people living together and all these third spaces that come out. And I'm not talking like cafe third spaces where you gotta buy a coffee. It's just like open door policy.
Fractal's been growing. There's Fractal Geneva, Zurich, Toronto, which was surprising.
There is a Fractal Tokyo too.
There's a
Isn't that
Fractal
crazy?
Tokyo?
Yeah, he just told me the other day that he wants to name it Fractal Tokyo because we teach this program.
So it's breaking news. It's hot off the press.
I think we knew there was like this community coalescing around us because we had just moved to New York and it was post-COVID. And so everyone had been thrown all over the place. Even our friends who had lived in New York for a while, I think their social lives had fallen apart during COVID because people had stopped hanging out. We had just moved to New York and we were just hosting a lot. Everyone was like just becoming friends and like weaving this dense social fabric. At some point later down the line, they were making these big leaps. They were quitting their jobs. They were making big life changes and stuff, spurred by this social group at our events. And yeah, that's like, at some point we named that thing. And honestly, like, coming from SF, there's infinite co-living houses with all sorts of names. And it's just like naming a company or even naming a child or something. It's just, I don't know, you just throw out a bunch of names until you find the one. I think we've grown into Fractal, and it's really cool because it feels like there's so many deeper meanings. Like, you just fractal outwards forever, and then there's like more fractals, and now there's fractals in other cities.
Do you recall the first dinner you hosted?
Early on, yeah, it was like 6 of us or something for what our like regular Sunday dinner, which eventually grew into something that was like, our apartment was filled to the brim at 30 people, so we capped it there, but then we opened up a second apartment across the hall, so then we could have even more people come. So it'd be like 40 people, sometimes 50 people.
Wow.
It was like this weekly event that we'd host.
And when did dinners with 6 people turn into it being like, whoa, that we're actually like sitting on something bigger here?
It does feel like a frog in boiling water. Like it just, every week it just grew.
Frog in boiling water.
At some point I was inspired actually by a friend of mine in San Francisco. He like basically publicly declared, hey, I'm creating this neighborhood campus. Everybody like in my social scenes should move into this area of the map. And he just drew a line on the map basically. And so I did the same thing. I just drew a line on the map right around McKibben.
And then it just started turning into a thing. And then when did you acquire the Fractal tech space?
That was last year.
That was last year.
So that was much later. A lot of stuff happened in between. I announced it, a ton more people moved in, and we'd also been regularly tweeting about it. So there's like a lot of people who've been following the arc. And then Doug and Ulysses pitched them on starting a third space that was like a true third space that people could just go to at any time and was really active and was nicer and where you could host events. And so basically the small group got together and wrote a proposal. And they just said yes. They just signed for a nicer apartment than they would have. And then it's crazy now to think about because it suits them so well. And they're such good stewards of this third space. But to some degree, it was like They just came at the right time when we were seeking a third space.
It's crazy how a lot of things in life are just right place, right time. What were some of the moments that were just you could not have really planned for, but that ended up being huge pivot points or growth moments?
The community enables this. It's like you see all these people have, not to be too cheesy or something, but they have things to teach you, they have things that they can do, and oftentimes they're like underutilized themselves. If you put enough people together, then like lots of things can happen, like lots of little bursts of light can happen.
I'd love to rewind to growing up. What shaped you to make Priya Rose today? And what are some of the good decisions that your parents made for you, since you're a parent now?
I grew up in Palo Alto, which is like a very nice suburb. And I think probably one of the best decisions my parents made is like they let our house be a social hub. My mom was worried about the house being dirty and stuff, typical stuff that I advise people not to worry about because I think it gets in the way of community. But for the kids, they didn't mind.
I think we get so caught up in, oh, we got to clean up before
Right,
people come that you don't
right.
even invite
Yeah.
people.
I think that's huge, yeah.
I don't know if it's because I'm still a kid at 30, but
mhm.
I don't care being in the messy space. If anything, it's more honorable because now
Yes.
you're seeing someone in
Right. I think co-living helps with this a lot. People are so used to socializing only when they're at their best and their friends are at their best. And so then they get confused. It's like kind of the same effect of Instagram. People think, oh, everyone else has their stuff together. Everyone else has perfectly clean houses and stuff. But no, it's all built on a lie.
Mm. What were some of the pivotal moments growing up too that you feel led you to be who you are now?
In some ways, I had a lot of independence, in part because we lived across the street from the park. Once I was able to cross the street by myself and stuff, and I had all these neighbors who also were my age, I would just leave every day and be like a free roaming kid in the neighborhood, which is interesting talking to friends. I think a lot of people just didn't have those childhoods. I know people think about, oh, back in the 50s, everyone had that, but I had that basically in the 90s.
People who are becoming parents now didn't grow up being able to be
Right.
free roam. Do you have other parent friends who might have grown up differently that you're noticing differences in their parenting styles?
I run into it like at the playground. I was at the climbing gym recently, and she was precariously leaning over the mat. And then this other woman who was also a mom, she was like, "Oh my gosh, be careful." And to be fair, I think that woman also is a pretty chill mom. But yeah, people are always trying to like tend to your kid and make sure they don't hurt themselves. But sometimes they intervene much sooner than they
The
need to.
helicoptering.
Exactly.
Which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
crazy to think about, like our parents' generation. I've been to some old parks that haven't been renovated in a while, and you're like, this is actually dangerous. And they
Yeah.
grew up and they turned out fine.
Totally.
Were there any challenges you faced growing up, or whether it was self-esteem?
I think honestly, it's counterintuitive because yeah, I did have all my friends over and stuff, but my parents are like fairly low EQ. And so I think I didn't understand people very well. And I had a lot of simple skills I needed to learn later on for like friendships.
So what skills did you have to develop later in life?
My parents tend to be like sarcastic. Like I feel like sometimes I'd be mean to my friends or something and not even have a sense that I was or something. And so I had to learn just to be more kind and optimistic.
So let's go to being 25. A few years prior, you
Yeah.
had met a partner,
Yeah.
but you were finding yourself in this depression cloud.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that?
So in hindsight, now that I've built Fractal and I'm surrounded by community, it feels like easy to diagnose. My partner at the time was going to law school, so we had moved to live there in a city we didn't know anyone. And then I figured we'd make friends through his school, but he was like struggling at school, and I think friendship was like just not his main focus at all. And yeah, so we were just isolated out there. I think I just really valued community, and I had it built into my life a lot as a child. And so I just was like by myself, basically, in many ways. And I think the way we wanted our lives to look was a little bit different on many axes, but specifically on that axis as well, is like how intertwined we wanted to be with other people.
So you're on different ends of the spectrum. What was that causing for you? Did you have hopes? Do you know what you wanted to do with your life?
For my rock bottom, hence the name, I basically also had been working this job that was just like frankly horrible. And I think that was really disappointing too, because I went into it thinking I was going to like it, went into it for a reason. And then it was just really not fun. It felt like fake work. There was like toxic culture at work. So eventually I quit, but I had like really burnt out. And so instead of going to get another job, I just quit with a little bit of savings basically and was like, whatever, I guess I'll just figure it out. I have enough money that I could live cheaply. In some ways that was good. I like cut all the ties with a lot of negative things in my life, but also in other ways I was like totally unanchored. My only anchor at the time was probably my partner, who then I eventually broke up with as well. So yeah, I was just like all alone I don't know, watching YouTube basically in the middle of the country.
So you knew it was the right decision to leave the job,
Yeah.
but did that uncertainty create anxiety or?
It varied, but yes, there was like this worry about, yeah, what am I gonna do? And just a sense of stress about that.
What was it like going to sleep at?
That's a great question. Honestly, yeah, it's hard to go back to that headspace. Like, where was I? I suppose, though, at times it was just sad or something, but I don't know. I don't have a vivid memory necessarily of it.
I guess our brains are really good at
At
saying
scrubbing it
feeling.
all. Yeah, I think it just was generally sad a lot, though. I think just generally all the time.
Did you have a sense that it would work out eventually, or when you were in this time period, was it just, how did you get on day to day?
I got a sense it would work out eventually, but not deeply. Like, I think actually my life has turned out much better than I expected, and probably especially at that time. I figured, okay, at some point, maybe I'll find something I like and I'll get a job at it or something. Like, there were little ways in which it was like, okay, I can find like a path that might work, but not in I'm going to find like a super joyous, really fun path and my life can go great.
What did you think like the likely path outcomes were? Did you even have an idea, or were you just in a state of complete?
I did. I tried things. Like, but basically part of my goal for
What are
the
some
year.
things you tried?
One of the main ones I tried was freelance writing, and so I don't know. I joined these like online groups and just read about how to do it, and then I did get like some freelance writing contracts basically, and so I was like just writing basically for like random company.
What was one of the contracts like?
Like one of the contracts was. I think the startup has now gone out of business, but it's really similar to like TaskRabbit or something. And basically, it was just like for their blog. So
For SEO, like early.
it's just like SEO stuff. And so yeah, it was actually really like I tried it in part because I really like writing, but it turns out I really do not like freelance writing. Yeah, because it's like mostly slop. And also, even if it's not slop, it's like it's not really you.
So you're 25.
Yes.
You're experimenting things like
Yes.
writing. You realize you're isolated at this point. You've quit your job.
Yeah.
You're starting to make moves now. And even though you don't exactly know what's going to turn out,
Yeah.
there's two things that you start doing that start resonating.
Yes. So the first one is literally my dad is a software engineer, but I never considered it for myself. My dad kept saying, "Oh, you're gonna like this," and I was like, "That makes sense. It doesn't sound like something I like." But he convinced me to take just like an online class, and then lots of things pointed me in that direction. I had visited home and found that my friends in San Francisco were really happy, which was like not true of basically my friends in like the city I was living or like most of the other places where my friends were living basically. So I was like, that's weird. And then literally I had found out my Myers-Briggs type and I'd gone to the Reddit forum for INTPs. And then the questions would be like, what should I do with my life? And like every answer was always like, oh, you're an INTP. Obviously you should go into programming. And so I was like, okay, I guess all signs point to this. I liked the class a lot. And eventually I did a pre-course for a bootcamp and I liked that. And then yeah, I got into bootcamp literally 10 days before it started because I had already quit my job. I had a lot of freedom. And so I said, yes, I'll enroll right away.
And you also mentioned that you're surprised that you can make six figures doing this type of job.
I knew you could make six figures doing that job, but it didn't occur to me that it was a job I would do, basically. I think I figured I'd be in some other role. The original path I had been on was like a much longer path to get there. And yeah, I think suddenly it was like, oh, wow, it turns out there's a job that I like and that pays really well and that has like pretty good work-life balance. And like also you just get a lot of like optionality about where you want to go work and who you want to work with and stuff. And it just solved a lot of my problems at once. I think in many ways I got lucky that it turned out like I liked a job that is like in so high demand right now.
So 2018,
Yeah.
you're also now starting to tweet.
Yes. And so I started making these online friends. And they were people who I looked up to. And at the time, like I said, I was like pretty isolated. I think I was intellectually a little lonely. I think it's like I had my partner who was very smart, but it just felt it was just the two of us. And then on Twitter, I made more friends who shared my interests and were very curious. It ended up boosting my confidence over time. They liked the things that I posted and they'd say really nice things about them. And those were people I looked up to. Yeah.
So it sounds like finding a good vocation, realizing that you didn't want to be isolated,
Yeah.
and then seeking out a community, even online,
Yes.
was a thing. So if you were 25 again in
Yeah.
2025,
Yes.
and you're in the state of isolation and not knowing what to do with your life, what
Yeah.
would you recommend?
I think looking back, I probably did do exactly what. It's like you have to find work that you like. Nowadays, I advocate for software engineering for like most people. You make really good money. I'm just a way more competent person because there's like such fast feedback loops and stuff. And then, yeah, you get some sort of confidence of, okay, I actually can take a lot of risks because in the worst case, I can go back and get a job pretty easily, basically. And even when I look at one of my best friends from high school, he got a computer science degree and then he went into philanthropy and ended up getting this PhD. That path doesn't pay that well, but like I think part of why he was like able to go down it and do so well in it is because he has this incredible backup.
What if someone's like, Priya, I don't like
Yeah.
numbers, too hard, it's not for me? Because it sounded like you were thinking that before you even decided to do the boot camp.
There is this thing where I feel like people act like it's like really difficult. And I think it's a lot of it is like gatekeeping basically. There's a lot of software that is not that hard. You have to put in the work to begin with, but then at some point you just know the tools and there's like still a bunch of jobs that I literally just don't think are that hard. So that's one thing. But two, I think people underrate their own competence, especially women, I would say. So they, from the outside, feel like, oh, that's a really difficult thing. And like, it is true that it takes a lot of effort to learn, but also like, it is also true that you can go to a boot camp, put in a lot of work, and then in 3 months be competent enough to get a really good job.
So from the top, 25-year-old,
Yes.
feeling isolated, doesn't know what they want to do with their life. Maybe they feel like they're late to the party because like their college years or whatever are behind them. What are you telling to them?
So there's so many factors in this. Like one thing is I'm really glad I moved to San Francisco to do all this. It turns out a lot of people who I like live in San Francisco. And now I live in New York, and that's also really good. Creating the community I wanted somewhere else would have been a lot harder. That said, I would say part of the advice I'd give people is to start hosting a weekly dinner and basically just invite anyone who you like, and even if it's really small at first, and then letting the people you like bring plus ones. I do think you can create a community around you. Maybe that's not your perfect community, but that is like much better for you than being isolated.
I love that.
Yeah.
So find a vocation that works for you, that pays, and then two, start building community no
Yeah.
matter where you are.
Yep.
But as like a sub point of that, move to San Francisco or New York. A lot of people's parents might be like, it's so expensive in these cities, you don't have a job.
Yeah.
What would you say to those people?
Yeah, that was me actually. I thought about moving to San Francisco post-college, and I didn't for two reasons. One, my partner didn't want to move, which I think was part of our lifestyle differences. Should have been a yellow flag in some ways, but at the time, I wasn't that committed to moving. And then two, somebody would tell me their rent, and then I'd be like, oh my God, I'd never move here. That sounds so expensive. I think it's just like people misrate how much space matters, basically. Like a really dense, walkable city will do so much more for your happiness than like having a large apartment or a large house. People have this idea of, oh, I want to live by myself. That's like what it means to be successful in adulthood. But we just prefer having roommates too. In these walkable cities, you don't need a car. And cars are quite expensive if you add up all the cost of the car and the cost of the repairs and the cost of the gas. I found that now that we have a baby, our expenses have gone up a lot. But pre-baby, I would say we lived pretty cheaply in New York, and at least as cheaply as we lived in these other cities that are considered lower cost.
It's funny because I'm paying the least I've ever paid in rent right now. I'm paying $1,100 for a room, and I love it.
Yeah.
Most of my 20s, I lived alone, and I was paying like $2,500 for rent. And I had a cool apartment and whatever, but it was just like I was so isolated, and I would doom scroll. And so it's almost like you actually need roomies to get you out of that.
I think part of the reason there's such a like co-living culture, especially in SF, but a little bit in New York, is literally because it's so expensive that it is more normal to live with roommates. Most cities don't have that, in part because it's like you don't have the pressures to live with other people. Once you have great roommates and a great culture, it's so much better than living alone.
To add to that, cities like New York and San Francisco, people aren't there by accident.
Yeah.
People are there because they want to be there. And if you're in a city that you're there because you want to be in, usually people have more inspiration, more creativity, different types of energies. And I feel you can actually have much more beautiful roommate relationships.
I'm curious to see how it goes because we're helping people start these things all over in these other types of cities. And some of them, their main questions for us is like, could this work here? And to some degree, we just don't know yet. Although some of them are getting started and doing great, basically. Like there's this Fractal Geneva, and that project is blown up. So I suspect you can build something like Fractal anywhere. But yeah, like the guy who's starting Fractal Tokyo, he's been telling people about it. And a lot of the feedback he's getting is, oh, that's not Tokyo, basically. That's not, like, we have different norms or something. But I think you can start like a little subculture.
You could argue that the norms of Fractal aren't the same norms of broader New York City or broader San Francisco.
We have 3 separate concepts. One is called Fractal U.
Yeah.
We would call it Fractal University, but university is like a protected term. The idea is people teach classes from their living rooms. And we have everything from like Indian cooking to like STEM classes to painting. I would recommend taking classes if you're in New York, especially for young people. 2 of the youngest people at Fractal right now are both 22. Their lives have just gotten so good so fast, and they're like watching all their peers who just graduated from college like really struggle. They feel like they missed this part of adulthood that it feels like is normal for Americans, that just kind of is sucky, it feels like, post college. But then there's what we call the Campus Accelerator program, and that is an online class to help you build neighborhood campuses like I would also recommend that if you're not in New York and you want to create something like this. And then third, there's a coding bootcamp that my husband runs. That's like a 3-month, really intensive program. It's actually based on the bootcamp that I attended, and all his students are getting out and getting these 6-figure jobs, mostly that they really like. And I can see that it like transforms them too as people.
I would highly recommend the boot camp for someone who is trying to figure out what to do with their life career-wise, and then also the Community Accelerator if you're not in New York City and you want to create a community like this, because you basically created this starting with dinner party, so it's not like you even need to have a big thing. I'd love to just hear you describe a little bit more about the Community Accelerator and like what are like a few actionable things if someone were just listening to this now and they want to start community building?
So the Community Accelerator, what we do is we have people go through it in a crew of 4 people. That way you just have all this capacity. So we have one person who hosts like a weekly either brunch or dinner, and then one person who starts Fractal U or a community university with their own name, and then one person who starts a co-living house. It basically seeds like a neighborhood. And then one person who's like the steward, and they just like make a website and they get coffee with people who are interested in stuff like that. If you're just one person listening to this and you're totally starting from scratch, I would just recommend hosting every week. I think that's like really huge.
Who should they invite? How do they go about figuring out who to bring?
If you feel like I don't know who to invite at all, I would actually just open your messaging apps and scroll through and see if anybody comes up, like somebody you chatted with recently, somebody you met at a party. You don't need to know them that well, but if they had good vibes and you think you'd like them, then just invite them over for dinner. And I always advocate making it as easy as possible on yourself to host. So we would just order Thai food instead of cooking. You can also make it a potluck. If you're feeling alone, you're not alone. A lot of people feel the same way you do. And if you invite people to a dinner, they will often be quite grateful for that.
Wow. That's something anyone can do in any place.
So true.
And what would you say to someone who's maybe overthinking, I got to clean up my house, or oh, I got to cook this 5-star meal, and who might be overthinking like the perfectionism of it?
It's a great question. It's like, I feel like that this is like a consumer mindset or something. Like, okay, I go buy a ticket and I go to this fancily produced event. And there's plenty of fancily produced events that people can go to, but that's not the thing that people are missing in their lives. What they're missing is companionship and friendship. Think back to like your elementary school friendships where you probably just, I don't know, walked around and took sticks in the dirt or something. Maybe you climbed a tree. It's nice to have a nice, beautiful, aesthetic party sometimes, but like that's not the thing that you're missing or the people around you are missing. Something too fancy makes people bring like a certain facet of themselves, but something casual means people can just show up however they are, however they're feeling. That's like the most important part, I would say.
I love how you liken it to being a kid, because I remember making mud pies. We literally have plastic food, so anything you provide that's not plastic is already a step above.
There you go. Yeah.
Wow. It's almost like, how do you tap back into when you're playing house with people?
When I'm teaching this class, I talk about this idea of friendship hours, which is like, why do friendships as adults feel so awkward? And it's literally because we barely spend time with each other. And when you're a kid, you can just meet somebody and spend a lot of friendship hours with them, like just time hanging out. You're in school together, you meet someone you like, you just hang out with them every lunch hour, and you hang out with them after school. And like within a week, you've racked up a ton of friendship hours. And if you go to summer camp, that's like especially true. Like in a day or two, suddenly you've actually hung out for 12 hours or something. And then as an adult, you'll see a friend like for an hour, and then the next month you see them for an hour. And so it's like you just haven't spent enough time together to like really develop trust and play and shared inside jokes and all of that stuff. So what I say is like you should optimize for spending more time with your friends. And
optimize friendship hours.
Exactly. And so that's the reason you don't want to put in too much effort to throwing some sort of a dinner party or something. Too much effort is not sustainable. You can't do that every week. The main thing you want to do is make sure you're hanging out every week, maybe even every day if you can.
Wow. It's funny. In Florida, it's very much like gated communities.
Right.
So you got the 2.5 cars, and I find that people I know who live like that are not happy and they're very stressed out.
Yeah. So we actually went to Florida a couple weeks ago because that's where my mom lives. And I kind of microdosed that lifestyle for 5 days or something. This is just a problem with America as a whole. There's so few places where you don't need a car. And I think that makes such a huge difference. But I think it's basically like people, they're not actually getting the real thing. And so they're like, okay, I at least want to make it seem like we're happy. So
Yeah. Speaking of trying to make it seem like we're happy, we
Yes.
talked about your big rock bottom, but
Yes.
as we know, life is
Yeah.
topographical and you have peaks and lows,
Right,
roses and
right.
thorns. So you're 33 now.
Yeah.
How do you view rock bottoms and how do you navigate through?
Now, when I'm struggling, I get advice from my friends or ask for help. And I'm not great at it. My husband's really good at it, so that really helps. So, for example, like when she was like 3 months old or something, I was just like really stressed and overwhelmed trying to take care of her. Our friend Tyler ended up putting together this whole what we call baby co-working, where we would go to his house and then everybody would take 1-hour shifts taking care of her. And that was like super helpful just for me to get a little bit of a break and to be able to do things that weren't parenting. But also it was helpful for her too. She got to spend all this time with these other people who are all lovely. And they literally would sing to her and they'd dance with her and they'd nap with her. And I think it also helps everyone, like all the adults as well, because they were basically all childless adults who like hadn't spent much time with children. We'd show people how to change diapers and stuff like that. Baby pilled a bunch of our friends. But anyway, all that to say, nowadays, when I'm really struggling, I have people around me who want to help me and who can give me advice. And hopefully that is like a mutual web of relationships where we can all help each other. I do think it's important for marriages especially to sit in this web of relationships. And I think it's like church used to provide that. There's this quote I love, I think from Oscar Wilde, where he basically just says 2 people is not enough. He says it in this very poetic way. But basically, like with just 2 people, your life falls apart. And I think like a lot of people are trying to just live their life with 2 people and with their kids, and then their relationship falls apart too. It's nothing against the relationship, but it's too much strain, especially once you have kids. It's like just too much stress for 2 people to handle, and then the things fragment and they crack.
Wow, wow, wow. One piece of tangible advice then is start building your community networks now because you can tap into those later. It's almost like your social security net.
Yeah,
literally.
It's so is. Yeah. I believe in this idea of social capital, which is like you have financial capital, which is money, then you have social capital. And actually, there's a lot of scenarios. For example, the number one scenario is like a zombie apocalypse. It doesn't really matter how much money you have. What matters is partly your relationships and then partly your skills. I think this is actually true just in general in the world. My grandmother had a live-in maid because she's from India and that's much more normal there. But the way that they met each other, there had been partition and crazy amount of violence and war. My grandmother is Hindu and she was visiting in an area that was almost all Muslim. And this woman, her maid, basically found out that there was another Hindu woman there and was like, oh shit, I need to go work for this woman because this is like the only person where I know I basically be treated well because there was so much animosity. And so she went to my grandmother and she was like, please hire me. My grandmother was just stationed there for a year or something. And then when my grandmother left and went back to India, she literally helped this woman sneak back into the country. And then because of her accent, people could have called immigration on her basically at any point. But like, she just had such good social skills and she was so well loved that never happened. Anyway, when war breaks out, money only matters when like your country is perfectly functioning. I'm not a doomer, but I sometimes think that Americans have gotten like really confused. Like you're young, you don't know what to do, and you're like, I guess I'll just maximize for money. Money is important to some degree, but it's only part of the picture. And even in a functioning state, you can be poor and just have really good relationships and live a really good life because like you have free places to stay and like you have all these rich relationships.
That is such a good point. I love social capital, and we need to talk about it more. They say your net worth is your net worth.
Yeah, yeah.
I used to think of that term as, oh, it's my net worth because it's going to get me like business opportunities.
Right.
It's actually, as you get older, you realize actually life is just so rich beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, living in community, you just get all this free stuff all the time. I literally posted in our Discord recently, I was like, I'm looking for an electric scooter. And Soren was like, oh, I just found an electric scooter. You can have it. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're going to do rapid fire now. What is one good decision you made at each age and one regret you have from each age that you would want someone who's that age to know, starting with the age 18?
At 18, I was in college, and my best decisions had to do with always seeking literally the best teachers and the best mentors. That was how I chose my classes, and I would go to the registrar and complain. If I had a teacher who I didn't respect, or even if I didn't have the credits to get into the right class, I would always just go and convince people to let me do whatever I thought would be most helpful for my education.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
And what's the regret you have from 18?
I honestly think college is a really good place to make good friends, and I wish that I had made it like a priority to create a really good friend group.
I share that. What about 25 years old?
25, yeah, the best decision I made was to go to this coding bootcamp, and basically changed to a career that paid well and that I enjoyed. And honestly, at 25, I made a lot of good decisions.
Anything you would have done differently, though, even to make it even better year? Like 10x?
Great question. It's so tough. I honestly did a lot. I'm not sure how much more I could have done. But I literally broke up with my partner, which was just necessary and probably overdue. And then that was like my first experience with co-living, was living in this crazy hacker house that had 2 triple bunk beds per room. That was like wild times.
Okay, and what about 29?
I moved to New York. I started Fractal. Maybe that was my best decision. I was still working on a startup that was failing, I guess. In some ways, I feel like we were just like hitting against a wall for a while. And now in hindsight, I'm like, okay, actually, a lot of those feelings were like good data that we were just going in the wrong direction.
Cool. The only other thing I want to talk more about, which is this concept of Senius.
Oh, Senius with a S, Senius.
Senius.
Senius, yeah.
When we talked last week,
Yeah.
you mentioned this concept of Scenius, which I had never heard of before. And it sounded so fitting because when you think of some of the great intellectuals or writers of the world, they're actually in communities as well. They support each other.
Yeah.
And as far back as like Roman philosophers or whatever, I'd love just to hear more about it and how it works and how it might be worthwhile thinking about it in 2025 when we're on the verge of a lot of change in our world.
Senius is this idea that there are groups in history where everybody does better than you would expect them to. A lot of famous people are clustered. One example is J.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, was good friends with C.S. Lewis, and then somehow they both became some of the most famous writers. They would read each other's work and they'd give each other feedback in this really funny way where sometimes they would edit as though they were in character. They had this great friendship that shaped both of their writings, and then they actually had a community around them as well.
I guess the Steve Jobs, Bill Gates example is probably an example of Senius because they were friends, right?
No, it wouldn't surprise me though.
That might just be urban legend.
Who knows?
Fact check it.
Totally.
Argue it in the comments, please.
Yeah. The Renaissance is like this. Like Gertrude Stein used to host these salons, and all these famous painters used to come. And so they all knew each other. When you have really positive subcultures, it just lifts everybody up and helps them all do their greatest work. And that's what we're hoping for Fractal too. We can all be better because of this community that we're in. Just seems straightforwardly obvious. I think I'm a better person. I am like achieving more and growing faster than I would otherwise. And I see it around me as well.
Wow. Where do you think, like, how does Senius start to form? I guess you're just finding your crew of people and your interests.
Yeah. So for example, in the example of Gertrude Stein, she basically would just host like an event every single week on Saturday's Salon. She's somewhat famous, but I think a lot of hosts are lost to history because the people who end up being long-term famous are people who have produced some sort of artifacts. And so they're writers, they're painters, they're inventors. Scenius hasn't been studied that deeply. There's a couple of people who have written about it. I do think some of it starts with somebody who like purposely brings people together. Something that people talk about is like this idea that a Senius has like rapid feedback. The wins, like if you were to get published in the New York Times or something, then it would feel like a win for everybody in the scene. As opposed to some cultures, it feels like, oh, that person did well, and so now I'm competitive with them. Instead, a Senius often has this sense of momentum because everybody's always winning, and you feel like a little bit of like ownership in some ways of their win, or it's just an extra boost. There's a culture of unblocking. If you were stuck, you could come to me or anyone in the community, and you could just explain what's happening, and then the culture is just for people to freely give you advice and offer you help and all these things. And so that means that everybody starts moving faster because when blocks do come up, you're just like quickly can work through them. Yeah.
I think that's such a great way to think about things, especially as people who feel like they're in rock bottom. Because I'm at that pivot point kind of where you're at when you're 25, where just like everything's changing, and it's like having people like Bo around who's also like thinking through similar problems and being able to bounce stuff off each other, like meeting people like you, like Ulysses, like Merlin's Place. And it's just complete, like, even if I am in rock bottom, there's just it's at least rock bottom is lit up. And I can see like the path of stair out, and like people are there, and at least we're like lounging in rock bottom. Yeah. And it's just such a different vibe.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. I was just gonna say, it's so crazy because I meet all these lovely people in our community who are like doing incredible work and so creative and so fun, and then like they tell me their backstory, and I'm like, oh whoa, that's so crazy to think that you were like really isolated once. It's weird, but yeah, I think a lot of people here who are doing great have hit their bottom.
Yeah. Wow, this was a really great conversation.
What's your rock bottom? Are you in it right now? Or this is a new podcast, so this maybe has never been covered.
Well, world premiere. The short and skinny of it is a lot of change and unraveling of the scaffolding that I built my identity around, which honestly was just being built around the fact that I think I hated myself for a long time because of like my own daddy issues and seeking dads in places like work. And obviously they're not great dads. And just everything coming to a culmination and just realizing like, wow, actually rock bottom is beautiful.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And then the second piece of that was I decided like I was going to try to talk to 100 people in 20 days and understand what their biggest challenges were. And a lot of people are just trying to figure out what to do with their life, hustling, grinding, and just normalizing like these problems that we have.
Yeah, totally.
So thank you for being on this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Where can people find you?
They can find me at pregoose.substack.com and also on Twitter. My username is pregoose.
Pregoose, and those links will be in the thing. And is there anything that anyone can help you with? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, if you're interested in building a neighborhood campus, something like Fractal, then you should go to fractalcampus.com where you can read all about the class that I co-teach with my friend Tyler.
Please do it because we need more fractals. Yeah.
Throughout this interview, Priya and I talked a lot about community-based child rearing, alternative methods of parenthood, and the Montessori method. And I'm not just talking about sending your kids to Montessori school. I'm talking about how you can actually bring Montessori into your home for a well-adjusted kid. It's not related to rock bottom, so I had to edit it out, but I have so many friends and family members who are having babies that I really wanted to blow their minds and share this with the world. So I've created a separate bonus episode just on parenting, which you can find wherever I don't know, this is the first time I'm linking it, so wherever I can link it out. So anyway, thanks for watching to the end of this podcast. It really means a lot. If you made it this far, DM me. I made it to the end and I'll send you a special gift.